So we had to, I just did it on my own because I was doing this thing where I memorized, this is when I was at a different church and we were doing scripture memory and I memorized Colossians.
Oh yeah, I remember you saying that.
But then I was like moving on to the next thing and I was like, well, what about the Sermon on the Mount? So I did that, and then one time for church camp, I was a guest speaker, and so the whole week I kind of broke down the Sermon on the Mount and did different parts, and at the very end I just did the whole thing.
That's awesome.
And I don't know if it was... it sounds awesome, but I don't know if it just came off as boring to them.
But like preaching...
I tried to do my best to like make it interesting and all, but like...
Preaching it as a sermon, though, like, I mean, of course.
I think it totally worked. I felt like... And I mean, I think people just thought it was cool that you did it from memory, but also they seem engaged.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't, but they seemed
They were
engaged.
following on their Bible, making sure you messed
sure
up.
You,
You messed that one up.
Well,
I remember there used to be like a play that would, kind of travel around, and I think either we went to go see it at some church or it came to our church, I don't remember, but it was a guy that did the whole Bible, I think, and by himself. It was like a one-man play. But I do remember in the beginning he did Genesis. He recited like Genesis 1 from memory, and it was just like total like darkness on the stage, and it was just him like speaking. Every time it would say light, and then there would be like a light that came on, or whatever. Yeah. But it was very captivating.
It brings it to life,
yeah,
in a different way.
Yeah, it was cool.
I encourage anybody to do scripture memory and all that. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Next Day podcast.
The next day on your discipleship journey. We get you every time.
I know. I'm Chad.
I'm Christie.
And we're joined by
Morris.
Woo!
Yeah. I just want to say, it's like our audience. I do want to say thank y'all both for taking control of the show last week.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
That's right.
I was not feeling good, and I would have sounded awful, and it just, yeah. So
glad you're feeling better.
Yes, we're glad to have you back.
I was able to listen to it, and I made some notes. So here's what y'all did wrong. There was no singing randomly.
Oh, there was no random singing.
You didn't make mention of any of our sponsors.
Oh gosh.
So
Arby's.
Yeah, it's just Arby's. When you want a meaty sandwich, come here.
Wingstop. I'm more of a Wingstop.
Oh, okay.
So
I will say this is getting to my favorite time of year. Now, some people may, is it because of Lent? And I'm like, yes, because this is when all the restaurants come out with their fish sandwiches.
I knew you were going to say that.
And Arby's fish sandwich is the top of all of them to
I've
me.
never
It
had
is the
Arby's,
best.
like anything from there.
yeah, are you seriously an Arby's guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I have always wondered how Arby's stays in business because I don't know anybody who goes to Arby's.
Now you know one.
And now I do one.
People like to hate on it. It is a punchline, but obviously people go to it. It's just like Spirit Airline, right? Like everyone makes fun of it, but it's like, well, obviously they're in business. People are going.
Yeah.
Like, they're flying Spirit.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Spirit Airline. When you want to fly somewhere, take Spirit Airline.
Oh gosh.
There we go. But thank y'all so much for taking control of the show. That was the first time that I was not on it because Christie's missed some shows.
You went through a whole year.
Yeah, and so that was the first one. So there's some trivia to y'all. So
there you go.
And luckily we finished 1 year of the next day, and then I was like, you know what, I deserve a break. No, but that was funny, and you recapped like kind of what happened that morning because on Friday I wasn't feeling the greatest. Thursday I was prepared to do the sermon. Friday I wrote out the sermon. Saturday I started like, ooh, I don't know, I should be feeling better. And then Sunday morning I just texted Morris and Carl. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not feeling good at all.
That was wild.
So yeah, but we got it all figured out. So
God is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we are this is the podcast where we're going to be talking about the sermons that you heard from Sunday. You can listen to those. They will be on our podcast right now. So you can listen to Morris in traditional service, Carl at the West Campus. He's feeling better. All right.
That's right.
Yep. And then Christie at the Element. So before we get to that, we are going to do our icebreaker. And so I have 3 possible ones. And Morris, we're going to let you pick one.
Oh, my.
These are all related to something big that happened last night, and that was...
The Oscars.
Yeah, finally, Oscars.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that, and so many people are like, what is that? What?
Yeah.
Like,
I
didn't watch. I didn't watch it.
We had our mega youth group event with students, so I had to get home as fast as I could to watch the rest of it. Because I enjoy it. So I have 3 movie, cinema, film related questions. So Morris, 1, 2, or 3? 1, 2, or 3. Pick one of those.
I have to just pick a number?
Yeah, pick a number. And
2.
2. All right. What is a favorite movie growing up? So it doesn't have to be your favorite movie now, but think back when y'all were wee lads and lasses. And what was Christie?
I know.
Christie.
I have mine.
Christie was like a puppet show that her parents put on because she didn't have a TV. And so, but favorite movie from back in the day, it could still be your favorite movie now, but what was a favorite movie back in the day that you just loved and watched a lot of?
I have my answer, and I recently just showed my kids this movie.
Is it what I think it is?
Fern Gully.
Oh, I wasn't thinking of that one. That is one.
Fern Gully. I loved Fern Gully when I was growing up, and I still, I'll go up to a tree that
means you are one
been
bodacious
cut.
babe.
So, do you feel its pain?
Yeah, I just watched something. Oh, what did I watch? We were watching some TV show or something, and they had X's on the trees, and I went
instantly,
and I did X's, and Sable I think looked at me like, "What?"
I know. I was kind of worried that it was going to be like creepy for the kids when we were watching it, but I was like, it actually wasn't too bad, and it wasn't as like I think when I was growing up, there was a bunch of like articles that had come out or something about how this show like brainwashed kids to like be against the oil industry or something. And maybe that's true because I've always been a bit of a tree hugger, but I remember I didn't remember how good the music was. Like the Hexus, like the bad guys, like the villain song was so good.
Beneath me.
Yeah. It's so good. So anyway, that's mine.
No, that was Tim Curry. And Tim Curry, he did the voice of that, and he's amazing in anything he does. But yeah, no, that was definitely a movie that my sister and I grew up with, and we watched it all the time.
And Robin Williams was Batty, and I totally...
Yeah, Robin Williams is in it. And if anyone's watched the new, or not new, but Avatar, I mean, that's essentially Fern Gully.
Fern Gully, yeah.
I was going to say, I've never actually seen Fern Gully, but I've seen Avatar, and I've been told, that's Fern Gully.
Yeah.
I remember going and seeing it and going, man, what a ripoff. Which apparently Fern Gully is a ripoff of Dances with Wolves, and that's probably a ripoff of something too. So it's just a lot of things. But Fern Gully, that was a throw. And that's one of those that's one of those wonderful, environmentally friendly films, and who knows how many trees went down to make that film. Because they used a lot of paper and they used a lot of
Yeah.
Morris, do you have a favorite one growing up?
I don't know if this is growing up, but Young Frankenstein.
Oh,
Big fan.
Nice.
Big fan.
Never seen it.
Never seen it.
It's
Not
probably
surprising,
too scary for you.
but it probably is.
It is. I mean, it's just one of the funniest movies ever made. It's just
Young Frankenstein. I'm gonna have to watch it.
It is so good.
It really is. It still holds up.
It does.
It's funny.
Now in my 30s, I'm doing all of my like film research.
Any
all
Mel
the
Brooks,
things that
Mel Brooks, you just got to watch. And so that was one of those great ones.
Yeah. Just and so many quotable lines. It's very good. Young Frankenstein. Totally need to see it. Yeah.
Oh, dang, now that you mentioned Fern Gully, I was like, hey, wait a minute. I watch that all the time.
I know.
But no, the first thing that popped in my head, and it is one of my top 5 movies, is definitely The Sandlot.
Oh,
yeah, it's good.
The Sandlot, we just... And I mean, there was a recently like an anniversary special like a couple of years ago, and they were like had the actors on there sharing their like the making of it and all. Yeah. I was just
that
like
is so
completely
cool.
bought in, because that was a movie that no matter what my friends were doing, we could go to anyone's house. We all had the VHS copy of it, and we could just watch it, and we quoted it. We would want to go out and try to play baseball like they did, but then it was just so great. So
yeah, Justin introduced the kids to that movie. I didn't really, I watched it growing up, but not like routinely or anything. But Justin and I went on a date several years ago to a drive-in movie theater downtown, and they like had it projected on a silo. Like fun. It was so cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
No, that's definitely good, and it's one of those 90s PG, meaning that random curse words would just come out of nowhere. So.
And they like there's like tobacco, and I was like, oh gosh.
And so you're trying to watch this with like students or kids, and out of nowhere a curse word it's kind of like the Goonies is the same thing, and there's all these like
we tried to watch the Goonies with my kids, and neither one of us had ever seen it. We were like, Justin's like, oh, but it's like the classic kid movie from the 90s. And I was like, okay, or 80s.
The first word is a curse word.
Yes.
Like the very first word said is
we
like
had it on for
word.
10 minutes, and I was like, I can't. We have to turn this off.
Wow.
It's good.
I've never actually seen the Goonies either.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I haven't actually seen it either. Just the first 10 minutes.
Oh come on. So, all right. Well, those are some of our favorite movies growing up. I could have went and said, "Oh, what's your favorite top 10 movie?" And we could have gone through the list, but we've done that some before. All righty. Well, let's move on to talk about the sermons. And again, we're kind of in this weird season of a sermon series because we're all kind of jumping all over the place. Thanks to Morris.
Sorry,
someone had to go rogue.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mr. Going Rogue here, has also got to go to a meeting soon. So.
So if he disappears,
he might. You might just be like, "Where did Morris go?" At some point.
It means we just told him, "Don't talk anymore, Morris." Like you've said enough.
You've said enough. Yeah. I've been told that a lot.
Yeah, I cut off his mic, and that's it. So every time he's talking, he thinks he's being heard. But no. So Morris has been doing just a little short series, I guess, in the traditional service. Last week you talked about evangelism.
That's right.
This time you talked about giving and generosity and things like that, I guess, stewardship. And you just felt like as you were here for a short time as our interim pastor, you just felt like, I really want to share this with the church. I really want to share this with the congregation. I don't have much time. I don't have much time left here in this wonderful place.
Yep.
So you are doing this while the other services are doing Sabbath, but that's sabbatical.
Yeah, Pat is doing sabbatical.
Just very on the mind.
Sabbatical, yeah. So Morris, this last week you talked about stewardship and I guess giving and all this. So share a little bit about that and
So it was. I enjoyed doing it. It was kind of sparked by, my sense, just like you said, my sense that I just really wanted to focus on evangelism and particularly welcoming last week, and then what caused me to really want to talk about stewardship was my realization that. That we're kind of in a deficit budget situation, which means the budget is higher than the projected income, and it's a good budget, and this church definitely has the capacity to fully support this budget. So I just wanted to talk about it, and so
what was that quote you said? It was at one of our meetings. You said like there was a pastor who said something like. It's in your pockets.
There's an old joke that where their church is doing a building program, and the pastor stands up and he says, well, folks, I have some good news and some bad news. Mm-hmm. And he says, the good news is we have all the money we need to build our building. And everybody claps and cheers, And then he says, the bad news is it's all still in your pockets.
Yeah.
But there's a truth that's behind that little joke, and that is that that particularly in this particular situation, the church has the capacity to support this budget,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of focused on 2 Corinthians chapter 5, where Paul is encouraging the church in Corinth to fulfill a promise that they made to donate to a fund that he was putting together to help the Christians in Jerusalem. For various reasons, they were going through a really hard time. So the Corinthians had said, yes, Paul, we'll support your collection. And but then they didn't do it. And as much as a year went by, and they never did do it. So he was writing in 2 Corinthians to say, hey, you know how you promised to give? Well, come on, you need to pony up. And he lifts up the churches in Macedonia. And the story in Macedonia was that he went there to the Macedonia, which is an area just north of Corinth, and he sees how they were living. He sees their homes, and, they're just shacks. Their clothes are rags. They got no food to eat. And he basically says, I was going to ask you to donate to this thing, but don't worry about it. And what he says is that they begged for the opportunity to participate. And he said they didn't just give, but they gave generously. And what Paul says, which is really awesome, he said, is that they gave themselves first to the Lord, which means that it was an act of faith on their part. It was an understanding that their whole lives belonged to God, and that they felt comfortable giving, whatever it was that they could give, knowing that they could trust God to care for them. One of the things that I had to cut out yesterday, that just because the sermon was just too long, was an article that I'd read that talked about how we sometimes confused money with God. And this writer said that the reason we do that is that money is kind of godlike for us. And the points that he makes is that money is godlike in that it's eternal. It outlives us. It was here before we got here, and it'll be here when we're gone. Like God, money is mysterious. Even the experts of Wall Street, the best they can do is just kind of make guesses about what's going to happen on the economy. And then he says, like God, money affects everything. I mean, almost everything at some point comes down to the dollars.
Yeah.
You want to get a degree, it's going to take the money. You want to go to Mars, it's going to take the money. At some point, almost everything comes down.
You want to eat?
Yeah, you want to eat, it takes money.
That takes us to our sponsor, money. When you want to do anything, get money.
Yeah. Right. And then he says finally that money mimics the promises of God.
Yeah.
We anticipate this heavenly banquet, and money won't get us a heavenly banquet, but for $50, you can get a pretty good steak at Taste of Texas, right?
Oh, yeah.
Money won't get us a heavenly mansion, but it could get us a pretty nice house in a gated community. Money may not be able to buy us eternal happiness, but money can rent it, for a little while. So what he says is the reason we can't get our minds right about money is because of how much it mimics the promises of God. And so what I come back to is the folks in Macedonia were able to be so generous because they had their minds right.
Right.
And they understood that they weren't slaves to their money, because that's what we do. We make ourselves slaves to our money. But they understood that whatever they had, whatever little they had, was to be used to live into the priorities of their living, of their lives.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I talked about that, and then I did this little stair step thing that kind of showed the various levels of giving that we had in the church in 2024, and how many families were given, in this range of dollars, and how many families are given in this range of dollars. Yeah, that was a really,
because you showed that at the town hall
as
well.
Yeah.
And everybody's on the top step, right? The very highest step, right?
Well, it's just amazing to see how much money that was generating, like for which part of the stair step, there's most people are in where most of the, the money's coming. Because, there's some statistic about like there's like 1% of the church that like, funds the whole budget or something like that. I don't remember if that's not real numbers. People don't quote me on that.
No, that's not real numbers.
But and it was interesting to see that in our context, how much more spread out it is,
Yeah. I mean, of course, what you see is in the lower amounts, the lower steps, you definitely see higher numbers of families.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then the higher the numbers get, on the stair step, the smaller the number of folks that are able to do that. And that's not a surprise at all. And, the question that I just asked is, first, where are you on this thing? Mm-hmm. And then secondly, are you being as generous? And the point that I wanted to make very clearly is that the temptation is to look at the folks that are at the top steps and go, oh, well, those are the generous ones. But that's not how it works. That's not how generosity works. I mean, Paul is lifting up the Macedonians. They had nothing.
Right.
Oh, Jesus, the parable
the
widow with the copper coins.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that wasn't a parable that happened, right?
Yeah.
And so, like she was generous. She gave all she could, and then that was nothing, right?
Exactly.
Quote, nothing, but it was everything.
Yeah. And so...
and it's not to say, too, that, like, the people at the top of the stair step are, like, flashy about it either,
they walk around here
in that
with their wad of cash, and they're just like...
Right, in that story, it was like the people, like, I'm giving so much, and then she's just giving what she can, right? But, like, in this stair step example, where, the assumption is everybody is being as generous and as faithful as they are able to be, and it's not flashier at the top than it is at the bottom.
So the question I left them with is, as you think about your giving in support of the operating budget of the church, are you being generous? And if the answer is, yeah, I mean, I've prayed about it and done the math and looked at it, and I'm doing everything I can do here. Well, then, great, that's awesome. But if you ask that question and go, not really, then what I said is, can you go up one step? Or if you're like at the left edge of the step and maybe it's too big a leap to get to the next one, can you get to the right edge of the step? Because it's a range, in each one.
Right.
And anyway, it, so hopefully it was helpful and it, kind of got folks thinking about that. And the best part, and I don't know who it was, but at a strategic moment in the sermon.
Oh, yeah.
In the late service, there was some child, I think it was a young boy, who for whatever reason started laughing. And it was at exactly the right moment. And the whole congregation just busted out laughing.
That's awesome.
And it was absolutely perfect. So whoever that family is and whoever that child was, please bring them back every week because it was just great. It was just great.
I love that.
Anyway, it was a fun time, but I'm looking forward to the series starting for Lent. And that was part of my sense of urgency about doing these things is I didn't want to do it during Lent. I wanted to, and so I'm excited about the sermons on the feast based on the Feast of Israel next week. So it was fun.
And maybe it's good to like just throw it in there and surprise people because around October and November, everyone's anticipating, it's about to be the stewardship series.
They plan their vacations around it.
Yeah, we get it. But but here's the thing though, Morris, is like I will admit I have been that person who was probably ever scared to even take that first step for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I'm not in a place where I can. Yeah. I have all this other stuff going on. I have all this and this. And, and I will say, like, I'm sure I grew up in the church. I'm sure my family tithed all the time, but like, it was just never something that we talked about. And so to me, it was like this whole new concept of something, and I was too scared to take that first step. And then eventually I started doing it, and there's one season during Lent a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what? I am going to try to be more generous. I'm going to be more giving to the church. I'm going to set aside money to give, tithes for the church all during Lent, because it wasn't a regular thing for me then. And then I was like, and I'm also going to set aside some money that anything else I see on other charities or anyone else asking for money or something, I'm going to give little bits. I'm going to do my research on it, look at Charity Navigator, look at all this stuff, learn more about the organization, go, oh, I'm going to help them out. And man, I got to say, like, out of everything I've ever done in Lent, that was the thing that I really felt something happening.
That's awesome.
Within my spiritual life of being generous and giving stuff away. I was being careful. I was making sure I was budgeting properly and all that. But it really, it really meant a lot to me. And I've been, ever since then, I've been more giving and all this. And so I hope that these are things that people can hear, is that it doesn't have to be a lot to start off with. Are you scared to take that first step? But it's like, no, I hope you hear that, like, yes, this helps out a practical way of the budget and all this, but like, it really, we believe in a generous God. And when we practice generosity, it helps us learn about this generous God.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you just live like open and outward, like that is the image of Jesus, right? You know, like outstretched, open, living completely outward. And when we think about money, how we think about it, we hide it away.
Yeah.
And we keep it and we hold, and it's all inward. Everything's always inward when it comes to money. So that's why it is a practice. It's like a spiritual practice to live generously and openly with our money. We're taught the opposite in society,
Right. Right.
But yeah, and that's a message I'm hoping, like, we do an offering moment with our students at our events that we do, and always trying to teach them about this. And, I know students and be like, I don't have any money. My parents just give me money. But I try to let them know, hey, but even if your parents give you money, is there a chance that you could just set aside a little bit of that? So you don't, like, if they give you, I don't know, $30, what if you just set aside a little bit going, I'm not going to spend this. I'm going to give this to the church.
Well, right.
And then you go and you use the rest of it for what you need for the movie or whatever you're going to go see.
Right.
I mean, $30 is like one popcorn, right?
Right.
One thing of popcorn, a movie.
Right.
But what happens if you just set aside a little bit? What happens if you do have a job, if you're babysitting or you work somewhere? Start working on, what does it look like to tithe?
Well, see, I started, we did that when I was a kid. My parents taught us to tithe every time we got money for our birthday or anything like that. Right. If we got $30, they'd say, okay, how much are you going to bring to church on Sunday to give and put in the offering plate? $3. So, we'd always, it was 10% every time. That's your tithe. And
that's holy money.
And I remember
set aside, money set aside for a special purpose.
And I remember thinking, out of the $30, I was like, $3? That's nothing. You know, I remember thinking like that. And as an adult, it's so much harder. You start thinking like, okay, well, out of, my paycheck, that's a lot. It's a lot more money, right? Like, than your $30, unless you're getting $30, I don't just get 30, thankfully. Got to live on more than that. But it is more challenging the greater number that is, that you are giving back when it's 10%. Maybe it's more than that you are, you're second mile giving, but God requires 10%, like the tithe. That's what it means. Right. And when we look at that number, sometimes it's like, wow, that's a big chunk of money that I could do all of these other things with. And that's why it's this spiritual discipline to say, I'm going to give this to God because God gave these gifts to me first. I'm going to steward these well and give them back to God. And as we practice, we are, I think like you said, Chad, like it does something within us, changes us.
That's right. Yeah. I told a story in the sermon about when I was just kind of trying to be serious about being a follower of Jesus, and I made a $5 commitment. And there was this one week when I was literally down to $5, and I just didn't, and I was on my own, and I was going to be a while before I got paid again. But I gave that $5, and it and as I said yesterday, it's not like I suddenly got a check in the mail or something, that it wasn't like that. But there was just a great feeling about just being faithful and experiencing God's blessing. And, as God's always been faithful to me trying to be faithful to God. And since then, my wife and I have been blessed to be able to give thousands of dollars to churches through all the years.
Yeah.
But that $5 may have been about as generous as I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so
right.
Anyway.
And we never know someone else's story about that,
That's right.
And no judgment here, because again, some people they had their family. Maybe they're just not in this place where they can.
That's right.
But maybe, but I do think a lot of people probably are. Like I said, me speaking, I could. Mm-hmm. I was too scared to until eventually I was finally like, you know what, I can, and I did. Just like you said, that kind of that $3. Oh, that's not that much, So I was in a place where I could do some, and then I felt like, oh, I'm actually. I don't know what it is about this that's making me, I don't know. I feel more committed to the church. I feel more like a part of the community. I feel more, whatever that feeling is. And I don't know. So just something to think about. And I'm glad that you're able to talk with that. And
I have one story to share on this, and I think I've shared this. I think I've shared this in the Element before, but about generosity and the way how greed just really sneaks up on you so quickly. Yeah. So to be vigilant about this. But Justin, years and years ago, bought a $1 scratch off randomly at a gas station, and then he brought it to me. We were young married, and he was like, "Hey, I bought this for you." Happy just
anniversary.
For fun. Yeah, I don't even, it was just it's like every time he would go to a gas station, he's got this habit. He would just buy a scratch off. He's like, well, someday what if we win really big? And I'm like, whatever. So anyway, he bought a scratch off. I scratched it off, and we won $3,000 on a $1 scratch off. And it was so exciting. And it was crazy because before I had scratched off that, the money and saw how much it was, Justin I remember talking to me about it would just be so cool to win sometime this unexpected money that we could just literally, this is the conversation, that we could just be generous with, that we could go and just find someone who just is really down and out on their luck and just be like, hey, I just want to give you $1,000. And he's like, wouldn't that be awesome? And I'm like, yeah, that would be great. And literally scratch off the money and reveal $3,000, and he's like, we can do it. And I was like, absolutely not.
How much fun?
It was instantly I was like, no, we're gonna go on a trip with this, this is our money. It just immediately turned. It's you can be so idealistic about money and how you want to be generous, but that's why it's a practice, and it is a discipline. It doesn't always, it's not always okay, this is gonna feel really good. At first you have to work, towards it and choose joy. It's the discipline of joy in that, because that's also a discipline, right? To sometimes it's, greed is there, it's within us, and we have to quiet that and turn towards God and turn open, and choose joy in the giving. So I just share that because I know what it's like to not enjoy it, to want to choose the other thing.
All right. Well, there's more to the sermon. Y'all could listen to it on our podcast. But now let's talk about Sabbath.
Sabbath. We wrapped it up.
Here's another thing that we set aside, a holy time we set aside of Sabbath. This is ending our 3-week series of it. What was it? First was Sabbath.
Sabbath reminds us.
Then it was Sabbath prepares us. And now this week you talked about Sabbath stills us.
Sabbath stills us, yeah. So
it steals us?
Steals us. Well, it depends on your accent.
It steals us.
It stills us, yeah. So this really was kind of a focus on our, internal need for restlessness. We just have this internal restlessness in us that we just have as humans, in our human nature, and that it is a hunger for all of these things. We desire so many things. And then also this idea that if we're not being productive, then what's our worth, right? Or that we have to get all the tasks done. So essentially this, I talked about in the sermon was we are always going to have work that remains undone.
Mm-hmm.
Always. The task list will never be complete, from thing to thing maybe, but our task list that, we just pile up in our head. I was just talking about, in the sermon, just sometimes, we get to a point where we're okay, I finished all this work. I can finally rest. And we already talked about, the week before that, Sabbath is not a reward for hard work, but this is how we live oftentimes, is thinking about it backwards like that. So we think, okay, we've done all this work, I'm good. And I'm I imagine myself just sit down on the couch, take a deep breath. Okay. And then, your mind is still going in that restless mind. And then I just sit there and think, oh, I haven't done my taxes, or
there's always something
there's
else.
Always something, there's just this restlessness within us. I
really haven't done my taxes.
I haven't either.
I did my taxes last year, so I don't know why are y'all waiting. Come on.
I know. And then same kind of thing, right? We have this constant desire within us. This phrase that desire is never satisfied is so true, right? We have this desire within us for so many different things, and it's a different, unique list of desires for, each individual person, but really all, really find their way back to the same roots, right? So we will be going through a task list, or we're going through I want, so many different things within us. And what Sabbath does is returns us to this place where we have a boundary. It's again, it's a practice. We're talking about discipline a lot today, but it's a practice and a discipline to, carve out this space where we deny those desires, where we deny the productivity, and we are just present. We just are able to just be with God and with one another and enjoy the moment and turn towards gratitude. Gratitude is the thing that will kill desire, right? We don't need more when everything that we have is enough, right? Yeah. And so what Sabbath does is kind of reframes our life in this way, that we look at what we have and we look at it through the lens of gratitude. We quiet all of those, need for accomplishment and accumulation. And we are just content to be, present in the moment and with God and turning, again, opening ourselves up towards God.
And that was a point that, and I may have mentioned it the other week for the other podcast when we were talking about Sabbath, but I was prepared to talk about it in my sermon I had prepared and then didn't do it. But it goes with that same thinking. And this is something I was talking with a good friend who's in student ministry also, and we were talking about, how do we teach Sabbath to students who are probably the busiest of the busy of all the busy.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she's always heard this quote before, and it's something that's always something I teach families and students is, when do you have a time where how you view yourself and your self-worth isn't determined by grades,
right?
Isn't determined by achievements, isn't determined about getting extra points for the team, whatever it may be, getting stronger for the team. When do you have that? And the same thing with adults. When do you have a time where your self-worth and how you view yourself isn't determined on how much money you're making, how productive you are, and how other people are seeing you and all this? When do you have a time to where you could just be and just know that God loves you just as you are? You don't have to do anything. It's just God loves you.
Right.
And so that's always what I've tried to, because I know students will be like, well, I like playing on the sports team.
Great.
And I love doing this. I love, it's like, okay, that's all good.
Yeah.
But when do you have a time to just be?
Right.
Like, just be you, slack off, just be with friends and family and all that. And I feel like that's always been a wonderful way to kind of think of like how to motivate you to like, because that is being productive of being unproductive. Like,
right.
Like being Sabbath, it is something. There's something very meaningful to it.
Yeah. And I think, Ecclesiastes, right? Like we were rooted in Ecclesiastes 3, which is there's so much in this chapter.
Yeah, a lot.
It's like one of the most well-known chapters, right? It's the this is the chapter I talked about that has the line that we often say in Ash Wednesday. Well, that too, you are but dust, and to dust you shall return. Don't you dare.
But dust.
You always. I thought I was thinking, don't look at Chad when you preach this.
I heard someone mention that line, that verse somewhere. Is that you are dust? And I was remember going, oh man.
Yeah, you are.
They didn't say butt dust.
Well, I mean, it's a derivative of that, like that, but we use that line. We say you are dust, and to dust you shall return, right? In Ash Wednesday, which we were, pointing towards Ash Wednesday, because it is coming up in 2 days. So, within this chapter, it's also for everything there's a season, a time for everything, right? Talked about how Simon and Garfunkel, stole that and riffed off of it.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
No,
not that one. Not that one.
I'm sorry, but it was the Birds.
Was it the Birds?
Yeah.
Oh.
To everything turn.
Did Simon and Garfunkel not?
I don't know.
Maybe they
did. But it's
did.
the Birds that did it. I don't think Simon and Garfunkel.
Jeez, Christie.
Oh man, I
Just
really.
saying.
How can we believe anything else?
Heresy, I know. Okay, well, the Birds, good to know. Yeah. So, and then in the same chapter, we were rooted in that, this passage about what gain do the workers have from their toil, right? And I love this line in, I guess it's verse. Let's see, it's verse 11. Yeah. Verse 11. He has put a sense of past and future into their minds, right? Human minds. Yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. And then in verse 12, I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Verse 13, moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. And then verse 14 says, I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it nor taken away from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. And I think that that's like just a really good picture of our need for Sabbath, like what Sabbath draws us to, and how it's centered around God, right? That we will work, we will have work. There is a time for that. There's this,
it's important. It's
right.
good.
It's part of our balance. We can't just like slack off and lay around all the time, right? But God has made it so that we have a time of rest, so that we have this time to carve out, that it reminds us, it prepares us, it stills us before God, that we put all of these things that we know we don't have control over off to the side, and we are just able to be and be loved and be love, for the others around us. So I think I, at the end of the sermon, pointed people to Lent coming up and challenged everybody to give up 24 hours each week of Lent in their day or in their week to and really a traditional Sabbath is like 25 hours.
Whoa. Take
it
easy.
Not one more.
Take it easy there.
Yeah, now you cross the line.
But to give up a day, to give up a whole day to Sabbath. And honor that in their lives, had some outline the challenge a bit.
Yeah, you gave some practical tips in there, especially like they do something special before and after, like do something
to mark it.
Yeah, to mark it, to make it like, because that's just good mentality wise that you're like, all right, we are in this, we're doing this together.
And I will say my kids love they love it. It's like for sundown, we've done this successfully 1 week. We've done this we've attempted this 2 weeks in a row. The first week, is when I announced to everyone that I told my family that Sabbath is canceled, because the house needed to be cleaned because we didn't prepare well. Right. I prepare throughout the week because I know myself, right? And I know my internal struggle and the boundaries that I need to create to protect this Sabbath, right? I will be the one to sabotage it if I let myself, if I didn't prepare well. So, but this past week we actually celebrated my mom's birthday. And so, they came over on Friday night, which starts our Sabbath. And so at sundown, we had our meal ready, and we'd cooked prior to that, which cooking to me is, I love it. I love to cook and prepare food for people.
I learned that's your favorite part of the house.
It is the kitchen.
I learned that from y'all's icebreaker last week.
That's right. Yeah. So I do love to do that.
That riveting one I missed out on.
But like I said, in Sabbath, I reframe, like the mess that has to be cleaned up or anything like that.
It's Sabbath. You don't clean it.
And I don't cease from putting, I don't just leave everything out, because I am a tidy person. I know that I would like to keep things tidy. So I try to, even within Sabbath, okay, well, we can put the dishes in the dishwasher. Okay. Just make sure it's empty. But again, it's part of the preparation.
You're going to be legalistic on this.
Right. Not legalistic.
You're not going to be like how people have been where they go above and
right.
It's like they do more work to not do work.
And
it's
I
like,
don't,
geez.
but again, it's reframing it, right? Yeah. I'm not cleaning the kitchen I just want to go to bed. I'm just okay, if it's unclean, I know that tomorrow that I have time and it's not in a rush. I am just grateful that I got to have my family over, that we got to have this meal. It's reframing towards gratitude. But we celebrated my mom's birthday, and we had them over, and they kicked off our Sabbath with us. And we light 2 candles, one for remembrance and one for observance, as it is in Exodus and Deuteronomy.
No candles for her birthday?
We did have candles for her birthday.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
They were sparkler candles.
Sorry, Mom. You don't get any. These are just for Sabbath.
And we just say a prayer. We bless one another. And, part of the traditional beginning of a Shabbat is you bless the children. And so that was special for my mom and me and, all of that, to just bless the children. And we blessed my mom for her birthday, and we just blessed one another. And that was the beginning of our Sabbath, and it was so beautiful. I mean, we really just stuck to it this weekend. It incorporated a soccer game for my daughter, but again, it being intentionally within our Sabbath, knowing that this is the season of life we're in, and maybe at some point we find that we need to draw the line in the sand there, But right now, I'm it doesn't feel like work going to these games and being with our family and all of that. It's something that we get to do, and we're not being legalistic about those kinds of things. And Justin, he spent most of his Sabbath on Saturday woodworking because he loves it. It's not Sabbath is also play. It's not just being lazy and laying around. It's just, what is filling your cup? That's the question, and where is it radiating from? So anyway, I challenge.
Yes, that is going to be our challenge for the Lenten season for all our listeners on the podcast, is find some time to set apart that's going to be holy. Mm-hmm. And when is your Sabbath? So 24-hour, it could be a whole day. I would also say maybe some people that's just an impossible thing, but when during your day, when can you find some time to set apart that's holy to just be?
Right.
And it's not
start there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just start there.
That's good.
And whatever that is for you, just like we were talking about, tithing and all that, start off somewhere, and then maybe that could grow the next time and all, but let this be a season. So we want to encourage all our listeners.
Yeah. Don't let perfect be the evil of good.
Yes.
That's right.
I love that phrase.
And I also love this one because every year for Lent, there's always, people will, I'm giving up soda or I'm giving up something. It's okay, or whatever. But then they'll mess up one time. They're like, well, I guess I'm done, and they'll just start drinking soda for the rest of it. It's like, no,
no.
just pick it up the next day.
Right.
Why are you just start the next day, and then just pick it back up. Why do you got to quit immediately?
Right.
So if you do happen to have a very busy week and you had no time to Sabbath, well, you know what? Start the next week.
Right.
Start the next week. And then hopefully after 40 days of Lent, maybe this could turn into a habit to where you do this year round.
Yeah.
So find some time to just be you, to have fun doing the things you like to do, but just to rest, to spend time with friends and family, to gather and worship.
To be generous.
Be generous. What can this Lenten season be for you to set aside things that are holy, set aside some things for God to point you back towards God?
And I will say, there's, boundaries with the Sabbath, of course, in our family, for mostly it's me. I'm we won't be doing any shopping. I'm not going to be online shopping. I'm not going to be and it's fun for me. I love to do it. But at the root of that is this materialistic need of accumulation, or if I get this thing, so that's what we're cutting it. That's the practice of what I'm giving those things up, and I'm, having space to give up anxiety and worry and, just resting in God instead. And just being, again, turning towards gratitude. So, you figure that out with your family, or just within yourself. Do some reflection on what are those things that I need to put boundaries around on my Sabbath.
I'm just I'm aware when I think of the kind of times you're talking about. I do long distance cycling, and on a given day, maybe I'm doing a 4 or 5 hour ride or however long it is. That really, as ridiculous as it sounds, that nourishes my soul in just so many ways. And awesome. It's because you're just out there, and it's just you and the road and your bike and the beauty of nature, and normally you're not talking to anybody, and just my soul is in a different place.
Yeah.
At the end of that than it was at the beginning. My legs are in a different place too, but that's a different conversation.
What do you listen? Do you listen to anything?
No, you can't. You don't want to do that because it's dangerous.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're just it's in the quiet.
It's quiet.
Well, it's not dangerous to listen to the next day podcast. So
it is while you're riding your bike.
Okay. I guess so. For legal reasons,
you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you got to be very aware.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes it takes you to places you've never been to, like biker bars and things like
right.
that.
Yeah,
these wonderful stories. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
No, but in Sabbath times of prayer and all, it looks different for every person. Everybody has these different things. Some people can just sit there and meditate in a quiet room for a long time.
That's a goal.
Some
for me.
people have to be moving and doing stuff. Some people love to go out for long walks. I know I like doing long walks. I know woodworking. Some people like playing an instrument, playing music, painting, journaling. There's so many things. So maybe during the season of Lent, experiment. Try something, and if you do something you're like, wait, that didn't relax me at all, then don't do it again. Do something else. Someone's gonna start trying to cycle and they're like, Morris, this was terrible. It's like, well, then don't do that.
It's a terrible idea.
But we do pray that this is as you prepare for Ash Wednesday, and as we get ready for this Lenten season, what can this be a season for to point you back towards God? As time of Sabbath, what can you set aside to be holy in this season?
That's right.
All right. Well, that is the end of the Sabbath series and Morris's Rogue series.
Going rogue.
And now we're aligned again.
That's right.
Yes. Now we're going and talking about food. We're all going to become foodies
as
we talk about feasts of the Bible.
The first one we were talking about, Feast of Israel, I guess, is really a fast.
Oh, okay.
But that's on Ash Wednesday. We'll talk about.
Well, I guess
Yom
it isn't
Kippur.
about food. Yeah, it's about these festivals and things that you see in Scripture.
Yeah.
And we're going to be learning more about those and what it means for us today. Yeah. So be looking forward to that. we're going to get to our ministry shout out. I'm going to, yes, we have a lot of things happen Lent-wise. So I think last week y'all did Ash Wednesday services and all that. So yes, go to our website, our new website.
Woo!
Still same address, stpk.org/stpk.org.
Yeah, just there's
and then there you can navigate, find our events page and all that. And so you can see all our Lenten Bible studies and all that coming up as well. I did want to selfishly do this because it's been a while, but I wanted to do the This Day podcast.
Yeah.
Some of y'all listening are already doing this. Like, well, Chad, yeah. But like, maybe for Lent this year, you have friends and family who are just like, yeah, I've thought about doing this. I just don't know what to do. I really want to encourage y'all. Let them experience the This Day podcast. It's our daily studies that we do, our daily time of meditation and prayer. Each episode, it ranges from 14 minutes to maybe 17 minutes. Like, it ranges in that. A lot of people do this when they're out walking their dogs in the morning, or they're out for a walk, or they're on their drive to work or from work. Some people do just sit in their house and they'll find a comfy spot and listen to it and reflect on it. You could do it in a variety of different ways. You can open up scripture and follow along, or just listen, whatever it may be. But yeah, the This Day podcast, we're going to continue it. I mean, it's been happening all year round for 2 years now.
2 years.
But we're going to be continuing our reading through the Gospel of Luke. And then as you get closer to Holy Week, we'll have special readings for Holy Week that leads us to Easter. But listen to the This Day podcast. It's here on this platform. Encourage others how to find it and help them. And that way, maybe this could be something very meaningful and holy time set aside.
Part of your Sabbath, maybe.
Yeah, part of your Sabbath. Yeah. Okay. Just don't do it while listening to riding a bike.
That's
all right.
Right.
That's
yeah,
right.
Don't do that.
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Well, we're so glad y'all could all join us again on another week of the Next Day podcast. We'll be seeing y'all next week.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.